Hello everyone, welcome to the GEM Immigration. You are watching the most authentic source for immigration information. Our motto is to deliver updated information and analysis on U.S. immigration reports. We hope you're doing great. Our topic of discussion for today's video is about Visa Bulletin predictions for April 2023. If you want to get benefit from this video focused properly, pay attention to details and watch the video to the end. Without delaying further, let's listen to Robert and see what he got for us today.
Visa Bulletin predictions for April 2023. The State Department has released March Visa Bulletin. Millions of applicants for employment based in family-based green cards provides prediction in the Visa Bulletin with an idea of when they will be able to submit applications and be granted green cards. On September 6, 2022, Andrew Parker USCIS, who focuses on EB adjustment of status cases and cooperates with the legal statement by U.S. Department of State. There are backlogs in raising green cards according to the State Department Visa Bulletin for February 2023. Obtaining of green card depends upon repetition in your country of birth. Almost every month visa-related information is advanced. In fiscal year 2023, the government has projected 197,000 green cards availability to people in the employment categories from 281,507 in fiscal year 2022, but 57,000 more than the 140,000 required by law as a result of the 57,000 family-based green cards regardless 2022. Let's start from employment-based categories. We are not going to consider these estimates as legal advice as they are just based on current employment-based category activity. For EB1 priority workers. For India there is no movement, for China there's no movement, for all other countries it remains current. EB2 members of the professions holding advanced degrees or persons of exceptional ability. For India there is no movement, for China there's no movement, for all other countries there is no movement. State Department on EB2 category commented, applicants from all nations before set final dates have continued to file additional applications, which has resulted in a higher than expected number of use and demand since December 2022. Curative action will be required in the upcoming months to keep the number used under the yearly cap set fiscal year 2023. Moving on to EB3 professionals and skilled workers. For India, there's no movement. For China, there's no movement. For all of the country, it's remained current. State Department of EB3 category advised. Increased demand in the employment third category will require the adoption of a global final action date, including Mexico and the Philippines, in the upcoming months to maintain number used within the maximum permitted under the fiscal year 2023 yearly limit. According to the statement, these guidelines can be taken out. The strong demand demands EB4 final action and application filling deadlines for the Philippines, China, and the rest of the world were set in the December 2022 Visa Bulletin. For the EB5 category, also the State Department provides the following guidelines to maintain number utilization with the maximum permitted under the FY 2023 annual limit. A final action date and application filing date was created under the employment fifth preference unreserved, including C5 T5 I5 or 5 category for India in the October 2022 Visa Bulletin. More retrogression is required since the number of use and demand has been higher than projected at the beginning of this fiscal year. To keep the number used within the maximum permitted by the fiscal year 2023 annual limit, the number use and demand in this category have continued to rise, necessitating additional retrogression of the final action dates and application filing dates of the nations in the rest of the world as well as China, India, Mexico, and the Philippines. The EB5 unreserved category's March final action date is scheduled as June 1, 2018 for India. For employment-based preference category. 28.6% of the global employment-based preference level plus any additional numbers for the fourth and fifth choices are allocated to EB1 priority workers. 28.6% of the global employment-based preference level plus any additional numbers needed for first choice for EB2 members of the skilled workers of the professions with advanced degrees or people of extraordinary ability. For EB3 skilled workers, professionals and other workers, 28.6% of the global level, plus any additional numbers not needed for first or second preferences, with the maximum of 10,000 going to other workers. 7.5% of the global average for certain special immigrants under the category EB4. For employment created by EB5, 7.1% globally, of which 32% are reserved as follows. 20% are set aside for skilled immigrants, those investing in rural areas. 10% are set aside for those who make investment in places with high unemployment rates, and 2% are set aside for them who make investments in infrastructure projects. The remaining 68% are non-reserved and open to all. In the end, let's talk about the 7% per country cap. The rule places are kept on the number of immigrants from any one nation who can be granted a green card and under the family and employment preference categories in a calendar year. In any given year, no nation will get more than 7% of all EB and FB priority visas. For direct family members of Americans, there are no per-country restrictions. There are long delays for several categories of green cards as a result of numerical and per-country restrictions on those categories, with more noticeable effects on a select few nations. For most of the globe, it takes more than 15 years for U.S. residents to sponsor their siblings. However, it takes 20 years for siblings from the Philippines and more than 22 years for those from Mexico. Many thousands of people are awaiting green cards sponsored by their families overseas. Many thousands of people are awaiting green cards sponsored by employers. The majority of these people are here on short-term work visa. But many of them lose the ability to keep legal immigration status in the U.S. when their kids reach 21 and run the expectation of being split from their families. First, let's begin with family-based categories. This forecast for the Visa Bulletin should not be taken as legal advice, since they are only estimates based on recent movements in the family-based categories. This shows how far the FIRE election dates could move ahead in the upcoming month. For the F1 category, which is unmarried adult sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. In Mexico, there is no movement. In Philippines, there's no movement. In all other countries also there is no movement. Now, for F2A spouses and minors, unmarried sons and daughters of LPR. In Mexico, there's no movement, and in all countries, there's slight retrogression. For F2B, unmarried adult sons and daughters of LPRs. In Mexico, there's no movement. In the Philippines, there is no movement. Then all of the countries, there is no movement. For F3 married adult sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. In Mexico, there's no movement. In the Philippines, there is no movement. Then all of the countries, there is no movement. For F4, brother and sisters of U.S. citizens. In India, there is no movement. In the Philippines, there is no movement. In all the countries, there is no movement. Now let's talk about the numbers for the family-based preference categories. For F1 unmarried adult sons and daughters of U.S. citizens, 23,400 plus any additional numbers not needed for the fourth preference. For F2 spouses and children, and unmarried sons and daughters of permanent residents, 114,200 plus the amount, if any, plus any unused first preference numbers, by which the global family preference level reaches 226,000. 77% of the total second preference cap applies to F2A spouses and children of permanent residents, of whom 75% are exempt from the per-country cap. 23% of the total second preference limitation applies to F2B unmarried adult sons/daughters of permanent residents. 23,400 plus any additional numbers not required by first and second choices for F3 married sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. For F4 siblings of adult citizens, 65,000. Plus any additional numbers needed to satisfy the first three choices. That's all from my side, thank you.
From the GEM Immigration Information Cell, this is all the updated stuff for today. Let us know topics of your interest for upcoming videos. If you want help of well-reputed U.S. immigration attorney, who can file any petition on your behalf, you can visit us physically at this address. For virtual appointment and more information, visit our website at www.thegemimmigration.com. Thanks for watching.